Hello and welcome to Labor Talks. I'm your host, Laurie Gruber. Today's special guest is Reverend Sandra McKinney. Sandra currently serves on the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors. Welcome to Labor Talks.
Hi, thanks,
nice to
Laurie.
have you
Great
here.
to be here.
This is a way for everybody to get to know a little bit about you and what's going on in your part of the county. So in order to do that, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this and being here. And I have served my first term, just completing 2 years, and running again unopposed, which is easier, softer way to do it. You know, I was approached 3 years ago to run for city council. It's not something that was ever on my radar, but I knew I was nearing a time for retirement from my career in ministry. And so I thought it was probably a good way to continue serving my community. And that race, as you probably remember, was a very close one. Had to go to a recount and did not win. That was a pretty powerful experience for me. And when they came asking the next year, which I kind of anticipated would happen, I would have been running against those folks who had supported me. And I said no. And then it was, well, there is an open seat for your district on the county board, and there's no opponent. I said, that one I think I could do that. And I'm really glad now I said yes. I've learned a lot this 2 years, met some great people. And again, I see it as a way of giving back to your community, one that's given me so much.
And are you originally from this area? Or?
I'm not. I'm a transplant from Iowa. Came to Northwest Wisconsin in 1979. Came to Eau Claire in 1992. Living alone for the first time in my life. And I just really felt embraced by this community and helped through some years of struggle and really not knowing my path, which is pretty eclectic. Maybe we'll get into talking about that.
What part of Iowa are you from?
The Quad Cities.
Okay.
Grew up there. Family's still there, so I get back often.
I work with a bunch of people from Waukon area
of
Iowa. So, now, and you're retired as a minister,
yes,
right?
Retired a year ago.
Do you see, or have you seen, any correlation between the problems working families face and the size of congregations?
You know, that's a great question. Probably within the last 20 years, if you really watch the New York Times bestseller list, a lot of the books in the top 10, 20 are related to spirituality. And then the advent of the internet and being able to seek out spiritual information on your own 24/7, I see that as probably one of the reasons the decrease in populations in congregations. And that's across faith groups, that's probably across the country, if not the world. I think it's a good thing that people are much more in tune with wanting to seek out spirituality and issues related to faith, which is evidenced by those top-selling books. So I think that's probably more of a reason you're seeing.
And people aren't feeling that they need to come together.
Not a need to gather. Now, I believe that one of the things faith groups do for us is gives us community. So that I see is lacking, and that may be at the bottom of some of our societal issues today.
I think it gives guidance too.
Right.
I know even Pope Francis, who's a liberal pope, came out and said to people that they shouldn't, I think it was taken the wrong way by a lot of people too, that they shouldn't have a personal relationship with God more so than coming to the congregation, coming together and praying. And I know a lot of people took it the wrong way, but because a lot of younger people are educated and stuff, and they feel like they can read those books or look for other ways to do it.
Right. I can hear people out there now saying, what about the separation of church and state?
It's not, that's a big issue for me, because I'm like, there's nothing in the Constitution that says, I can't talk about one and then the other.
Which I believe that too. And I think the more we can bring our spirituality and our faith beliefs into our daily lives and not keep it so separate where it's just an hour on Sunday morning, I think we need to take it into the rest of our lives.
Every day. And I know that when we were all down in Madison for the Act 10 rallies and stuff like that against Governor Walker's Act 10 bill. All of the faiths were there, all of them.
Yeah, and I was there.
And they had done the letters saying that they all supported us.
Right.
That bargaining is a human right, not just something that people need at work. They need to be treated like human beings, not cattle.
Right.
So, and you're currently the president of Jonah.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, Jonah just celebrated its 10th year, and I was honored to be part of Jonah from the beginnings. Served as vice president back when it began. And it's about bringing faith communities together and doing work on an interfaith level. And I do have a lot of passion for that myself, and seeing how do faith groups, how can we work together to make our community better and stronger. Currently, Jonah is very involved in working with the immigration issues, which are pretty prevalent right now, not only nationally, but in our community too. We have been, 2 years ago, we took on what's called people who are incarcerated, finding ways to return to productive lives. EXPO is the acronym for that. And it's like bringing people to the table who maybe have been part of creating a problem, being part of finding the solution. So we've done a lot over the 10 years with prison reform, looking at issues regarding incarceration. Why does Wisconsin incarcerate more people than all the states that surround us put together?
We've got a big prison industry in this state.
Yeah, so that's another one of our issues that we've taken on. And Jonah's about looking at, just not do we have a need to offer a way to feed the poor or the hungry. We like to go deeper and say, why do we have people? Why do we have people who need to be fed? Is it a food distribution issue? Is it lack of food? Is it probably more likely a lack of financial means, which then presents a much different issue to address. So that's the work of Jonah.
Okay. And are they getting involved with the opioid problems and the homeless?
Oh, definitely.
In their town too?
Actually, we sat at the table for the district attorney's meth task force. And of course, the EXPO people are coming through that program, have been very helpful in giving us ideas of how to address that population. So both opiates and meth. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we've got the heroin problems that are coming in, and the trafficking problems that are coming through.
Right.
And do you support the living wage ordinance? And will you fight
I did. I voted for
it.
it.
Will you fight to keep it in place?
That was one of my first really in-depth experiences in being on the county board, was just learning the backstory of, it was a year's worth of work before it really came to a vote. And that meeting that night, I'll never forget it. It was the longest meeting in county board history. Went till after 1 a.m. And I really challenged myself to go deeper as to why do I support this? Why do I want to support this? And what came for me was there's many children living in homes in Eau Claire whose parents either don't make a living wage, whether it's one parent or two parents, working multiple jobs to even come up to above the poverty level, which they don't. And so the vote I cast in favor of the living wage was for the kids who can't vote. I saw that and then that was the words I gave when we usually all give a reason why we're voting the way we are. And to me that felt at a deep level that, I'm voting for those kids who don't have a vote.
Have other counties around Eau Claire County come to Eau Claire saying, can you help us pass our own living wage ordinance?
I really believe,
give us the wording?
I think that happens. I know that happens. And for a lot of issues, not just living wage. The gerrymandering issue, we voted that resolution this year. And I know a lot of the surrounding companies or counties have come to us looking
for the wording for that.
Yeah.
And what about the municipalities? Have they done it as well, or have they left it to the counties to do it?
You know, I think one of the things I'll focus on my next 2 years is city and county working together closer. I haven't witnessed a lot of that. Now maybe they do on a level I'm not aware of. But I know I did go to a meeting where the city was talking about a living wage ordinance, and it was tabled. And
As it was in the municipality where I live.
right, so hopefully, as I'm in some circles where there's city council people represented, and so one of my goals for this next 2 years is to see how we might work to create a stronger bond.
And we mentioned this earlier. In the past, you ran for city council, and it was an extremely close race.
Yes, it was.
How can we convince people that every vote counts?
Well, from that experience, I certainly know it does. And I've heard about campaigns across the country this year where it came down to one vote. I think there was one that had to do a coin toss. And so as we see those things happening, I mean, that certainly is a great indication that, yes, your vote counts. And I think it's a duty and a responsibility for people to vote. I can't remember a time where I did not go to the polls and vote, even though I wasn't always involved in politically like I am now. But yeah, every vote counts.
And you also mentioned earlier about the thing about the separation of church and state. Do you run into it a lot on county board where you feel like you have to watch what you say?
No, I ran into it more in the church. And I think from, when I was still serving the church my first year on the county board. And so I felt necessary to share with my board of directors that I was going to run, asking for their blessings for that. I'm not sure what I would have done if they said no. But I had a contract that was going to end with the idea of retirement. So I was looking at my next step of what I could do rather than vegging in front of the TV. Oh, not public television, though. So, yes, I lost my train of thought.
Well, the separation. I mean, I know that I've been accused, and I'm on a small board in a small area, of having special interests. And I do have special interests, the interests of the people that I represent, and to me also the employees that we oversee. And I don't feel that a board's place is to sabotage their own workers. And I really hate how much money we spend training someone to watch them turn around and go someplace else for $2 more an hour. I don't want to be the training grounds for every other community in the state. And so you run into this thing about special interest. And so that's why I was wondering if you run into, because obviously one of your special interests is your faith, how do you separate it?
And I really come from a more liberal faith, and I haven't seen or witnessed that unless I'm just not, my eyes aren't open. But like I said, I probably ran into more from the church because of that losing your nonprofit status. That was probably more of a concern, but it hasn't impacted.
And I know when I first got on the board over there, we restarted doing the Pledge of Allegiance, which I know a lot of boards still don't do, and they don't, obviously they don't pray, which I have no problems with it, but
and then it's up to each supervisor to do what they want with that.
So that's a nice way to do it. At least get something back in there.
It's all about language.
But as far as getting people involved, how do we get people out and get them to start voting and caring about who we elect?
Well, something happened with the last election that has brought people out of the woodwork. I am just amazed at the number of people who have stepped up and are coming to me and saying, "What can I do? I've never been involved. I need to feel like I'm doing something." We've found, and research has shown, that women need to be asked more than once to run for public office. In fact, some have to be asked up to 7 times. And we don't see that in the male
Are
population.
we being difficult?
And I think it's because women haven't traditionally been that
Active politically.
active and being seen by others. We currently have 15 women running, some unopposed, for the county board.
That's awesome.
And that's a first. The city council, I think, has 3 or 4 women running. So we actually have the potential on county board, if all those women are seated, to have the majority by 1.
By 1? Every little bit counts.
And so I just see it as a way to give back to community, to stay involved when you're leaving a career. Although I really like the diversity that's happening age-wise. Our youngest is still in college that's running for one of the county board seats. I think I'm the elder. Well, no, Colleen beats. But I'm up there, getting up there with her. So I like the diversity of the ages, so that, a county board should represent the community. And if the county board is made up totally of elder white men, you're not representing your community. And so I'm encouraged by Eau Claire and the diversity that's evolving as representatives come forward. And some of that comes from us seeking out and asking people, would you consider?
Actively recruiting someone to come run for that spot.
Yeah.
Well, and then that's one hurdle that we have to do, is getting the people to run.
Right.
The next hurdle is to getting the people to the voting booths.
Right.
And making sure that they take ownership. Instead of, I hear a lot of complaining. Across the country, I hear a lot of complaining. And yet if I asked them if they voted,
Did you vote? Yeah.
many of them did not vote.
Right.
They don't feel their vote counts anymore. It's different on a local basis. We know one vote counts versus the national basis with the Electoral College, where they feel, because the popular vote and the Electoral College vote were a totally different thing in the last presidential election.
Yeah.
But especially locally, we have to get them to understand that their vote does count. And it's a challenge. How do we do that? Social media, yes, but my mom doesn't pay attention to the computer. She's 90. She still should go vote.
She should.
My mother-in-law's 84, and her comment is, where do I find the information to know where there's so much misinformation out there. Where do we go to get the information to know who we should vote for? And so that's another thing. It's how do we do that?
Get that?
How do we get that information to them so that they isn't no, it's not fake news. We want to get that information to them.
Yeah, and I think going to people you trust who may be more educated would be one way to do that. I know people will come and know, who do you supporting, and because they appreciate and honor my opinion. I think all of us have a responsibility to cast our vote. That is, and if we don't do that, then we're in jeopardy of creating communities that what's happening nationally.
We're going to go back to elderly white men voting, and then you're going to see who you get elected.
Not that we don't love elderly white men.
I have 3 nieces that graduated from college at the same time, and they weren't actively voting. And I'm like, one was because she was away at school. It doesn't matter. We're women. Someone fought and died for the right for us to vote.
Yes.
They need to vote. And I said, don't pay attention to what my opinions are or what grandma's opinions are. I said, you have your own opinions.
Yeah.
Figure out what matters to you. Now go see who's running and see where they stand on those issues. But the most important thing is to vote.
Right.
So we've got to get, I really feel we got to get that word.
And our next vote is February 22nd? No, 21st.
For the primary.
20th.
Yes, it's a primary vote
the primary, so probably not that many people on the ballot, but every
race is important.
race
and
is
one of the
important.
races that's on that primary ballot is Supreme Court.
Yes.
And obviously we've seen a lot of the things that have come before the Wisconsin Supreme Court in the last 8 years. And now, of course, going to national Supreme Court where we've got to make sure that the gerrymandering gets turned back around.
Right.
And citizens' action. That's another one. It's got to make sure that gets turned back around. Now, locally, what issues do you feel are the most important going forward for Eau Claire County to be looking at?
I'm sit on 4 committees, so I have the most passion, I think, for the committees, the work I know most about. The living wage ordinance, I know that will be efforts to overturn that. And so to keep our focus on making sure that stays in place and encouraging the city to pass that ordinance too, which would, I think, make it more powerful. I sit on judiciary, and so the issues that meth and addiction that we face with those, I think we need to really be giving. I'm really proud of the city-county health department in this town, who Jonah has worked closely with in being an entity that addresses those issues. I'm grateful to have 43 years of sobriety. And so I bring that experience to my work in that area. We just need to be addressing, and then homelessness and poverty. Poverty is huge, which kind of ties into the living wage ordinance. But we like to think this community probably doesn't have homelessness or poverty, and we know it's very
that's
real.
Not true. Yeah,
it's very real.
I've noticed that the homeless issue has increased.
Yes.
In the last several years, too, here.
Right. So it's important we address, the revitalization of downtown, how important it is, but as we do those kind of improvements, it's now happening in District 2 with the Cannery District, but we keep pushing out the populations that were living there at lower rents, and so what do we create for that population?
Yeah. And like I was mentioning to Sue earlier, that we have wonderful shelters in this town, but you can't get them if you're not clean. Is there some place that they can go to get them off the streets?
I know there's work being done right now with, in fact, Jonah is hosting a homeless series beginning on the last Monday in February at First Congregational Church, looking at the homeless issue and what are solutions that we might come up with. So I know there's a lot of different entities. Western Dairyland is looking at that issue. So a lot of people coming to the table to talk about, explore, come see what our solutions.
Because it affects everybody.
It does, yes, it does.
So many people are like, it doesn't affect me personally, so I don't need to pay attention to it. But it affects everybody.
Many of us are one paycheck away from the street,
or one
which
injury,
includes me.
Or one injury away
Yes,
with the cost of
right,
health care and the
right.
problems with health care now.
Yeah.
One injury away. And it's really sad that people have to decide between the roof over their head and
Right.
the health care that they need to do
Right.
that. What other committees are you on for the county?
Aging Disability Resource Center, and I was just assigned to the County Housing Commission, and I'm still getting to learn what that one's about. It was totally separated from the county.
Okay.
And yet we still sit on the, 2 county board members sit on that committee, so I'm still learning what that one's about, and was grateful to be asked to sit on that. A lot of the work I'm doing on the county fits in with Jonah's work, and so I'm really appreciative to.
Well, just having human rights,
Right.
the aging and disability.
Right.
My mom's 90, my mother-in-law is 85.
Yeah.
And I testified at the Joint Finance Committee
Good.
when they were trying to target dementia programs and things like that. And it's like, especially with an aging population,
Yes.
we need to be concerned about taking
Right.
care of our elderly and treating
Right.
them with dignity than
Right.
shove them someplace and
I am
forget
that
about
population. I am an elder now. Some days I don't think so.
them. We'll never grow old. Age is a mental
It
state of
is.
mind, right? Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Cindy?
I'm just really appreciative of one of the things I want to do this next 2 years is really better know my district. I think of Stephen Colbert when he did his series on better know a district and talk to legislators. So I'm looking at resources for doing that, and just grateful for this opportunity. And part of you, perhaps in District 2, will be catching this, and I am your representative. It's on the northwest side of, in an area that a dear friend of mine let me know when she grew up in that area was called the Bloody Ninth. Which tells you maybe some of the history. But it is, it's a diverse district, a lot of blue-collar workers, a lot of elderly, little small bungalows. And so my house sits exactly in the center of the district, which was kind of, I thought, powerful when I looked at that on a map. So that's one of my goals for the next 2 years. I'm also supporting a gal who's running for city council who represents District 4 for the city, which includes my district. And I believe you'll be interviewing her later today, Jill Christopherson.
Yeah. So that's good. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
That's today's program. My thanks to our viewing audience and to Reverend McKinney for who made today's program possible, for coming and being our guest. My thanks also to the folks who work behind our scenes and behind our cameras from Valley Media Works. They not only make the show possible, but they give us, our working families, and a place to be heard. So, a final note, Labor Talks is on channel 993 twice weekly, and you can also use your favorite search engines with keywords Labor Talks and Valley Media Works to find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in today.
Made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.